Welcome back to another episode of the Hormone Hub podcast, where we talk all things perimenopause, menopause, and have the conversations no one else is having. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. Hello, ladies, and welcome back to the Hormone Hub. And today is going to be a great conversation. I know all of our conversations great, but before we hit record, we were having a really good conversation, and I think you're really going to enjoy today. So we have Lauren Howman as our guest, and Lauren is a mum of 4. She's a nurse practitioner, an army veteran, an entrepreneur, and a life and sober coach, which, is quite the skill set there. So, Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And yes, we were having a fabulous conversation before you ever hit record. So I imagine it'll be fun.
Absolutely. It's always one of those things. We start chatting and then I'm like, oh gosh, we better hit record. Otherwise, we would have talked about all the things that we're talking about.
Right. Exactly.
But Lauren and I connected. She was looking to be a speaker on podcasts and mentioned what caught my eye was the fact that she was a sober coach. And we've talked about the impacts previously on the show of alcohol and how it can sort of impact us during perimenopause and menopause. But it's great to have the conversation of someone who's walked that walk and has come out the other side and now helps other women as a sober coach. So maybe we'll start with your story, Lauren, and how the good, bad, and the ugly, and how you sort of came out the other side and where you are today.
Sure. So one thing that I do know is that anyone listening, and again, thank you for having me, we have this like gray area of problem drinkers.
Yeah.
And so it's like, am I a problem? Is this a problem? Is this not a problem? I'll first off just say that it's always just based on, is it a problem for you? And if you're starting to listen to my story and you're like, oh, yeah, that sounds really familiar.
Yeah.
It's okay. We always think that we can't talk about it because there's so much stigma against anyone who's having a problem with alcohol. Any other drug, it's like, oh my gosh, let's get Lauren in rehab. She somehow got addicted to heroin. I don't know how it got started, but poor Lauren. Yeah. But if I come across as someone with an alcohol problem, it's not poor Lauren. It's like, you're weak, you're broken. And so there's all this stigma about talking about, to even raise your hand and say to a girlfriend, like, hey, do you think maybe we're drinking too much?
Yeah.
So because there's just so much negative juju around it, I guess.
Yeah. But, and sorry, just to interrupt there. I always think too, like if you're questioning yourself on how much you're drinking, or you are waking up with regret the next morning, or, oh, I'm never going to do that again, it's likely that there's a problem there.
Right. Absolutely. It's if you're having any of those questions, any of those regrets, if you're telling yourself that you're not going to drink today, but then you end up at the store a couple hours later because you've talked yourself into it. So there's so many different things, but really if you're questioning it and you're searching on Google, people that don't have a problem, they're not searching because they're not thinking about this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, well, anyway, what I was going to say is that, so listening to me tell my story briefly before we can have this conversation as well, you may hear parts of my story that you're like, oh man, I do that. As drinkers, because we're not talking about it publicly, we think we do all these unique things. Like you're the only person that may be hiding airport bottles in your dresser, or you're the only person that goes to the kitchen and pours a glass of wine, chugs it, and then refills it. So everybody thinks you're having one, but you just had 2 in that space of time. Yeah. So you think that you've invented all these new things and that what you've done is just so shameful and so different. And what you come to find out, if you actually speak to people who are willing to talk about it, is that everybody's doing that. Like, right? Like everybody's doing something like that. But it's just an interesting thing. I grew up in a normal house. My parents actually weren't drinkers, which is different from a lot of people who find themselves with a problem with alcohol. But my parents were not. My dad might have a beer once a year. My mom was nothing. She didn't like it. So moving out on my own, of course, we started to dabble with alcohol, and it was never a really big issue or anything in my life. But as we started to go along through college, through early 20s, late 20s, I just started to pick up the habit of, during the college years, it was that the binge drinking on the weekends. We'd all go out, get hammered, and then sleep into the next day till like 2:00, eat some pizza, go back out again, do the same. And through my like later 20s and 30s, I just started kind of increasing that weekend. So now it included Thursday, and then suddenly it was Wednesday too.
Yeah.
And we're getting older and we're married and we're not going out all the time. So then you can just have a glass every night. There's always a bottle on the counter open.
Yeah.
And eventually it just turned into a daily or almost daily thing. I will say daily unless I was trying to make a point of saying, oh, look, I can go a day without. So but that didn't really come till I was maybe 37 or 38. And so I had this long history from like probably 18 to then, and pregnancies and nursing babies. I didn't drink during any of that, but it just started to be a thing.
Yeah.
And I started to recognize after I had my second child, I was almost 38 when I delivered him. And I started to kind of recognize like, wow, this actually, I thought I liked it. I thought it was just who I was. It was part of my personality. I'm
Yeah.
starting to see like, this has actually kind of got a hold on you, girl. Like you're saying you're not going to drink and then you are drinking and it's causing problems in your marriage because my husband was also a very casual drinker.
Yeah.
And it's causing problems because he's like, what are you doing over there? Like you've had a bottle already. What's happening? So then I started hiding alcohol so I could have my one bottle and that would be it,
Yeah.
according to his eyes.
Yes.
But this is actually my bedroom. It's where my office is because it's this wonky, long, crazy bedroom with a lot of space.
Yeah.
My dresser's over here.
Yeah.
And you can hide bottles. He's not going in my sock drawer. So I could be in here working at my computer and I've got my glass of wine from the kitchen, but then I've also got what I can pour in here.
Yeah.
And so just all these different ways to get more because as you drink more and more and become addicted or dependent upon it, however you want to say it, it takes more and more.
Yeah.
And you're not feeling the feel good feelings. And even for a lot of people, you're not even having a good time anymore. When I was drinking as a casual drinker, as a college drinker, we were having a great time. Like even with the hangovers, we were willing to do it again.
Yeah.
But I wasn't even having a good time.
Yes.
And so very functional. I went to work every day as a nurse practitioner, 9 to 5 every day. And I didn't drink during the day. People think, oh, well, you must have not been that bad. You weren't drinking while you were working or you weren't drinking in the morning. I was doing all of the functional things that I needed to do.
And that's it.
But
and alcoholism, there's so many different ways it can look. It's not the wino in the park with a brown paper bottle. It's not the mum who's putting vodka on a cereal in the morning. It can be, and I think the women that I speak to are essentially functioning alcoholics.
Yes.
So they're very capable and get what they need done in their day.
Right. I would even gander that the functional alcoholics are those people that are naturally just really talented in what they do. And they are really successful, bright, capable people. Yeah. And might we have gotten in this little pickle that we're in because of how much we are able to do, and we're numbing against the toll that takes on us, the hustle culture, the workaholic life. Yeah. So I feel a lot of the numbing and drinking comes with that personality type.
Yeah, absolutely. That driven type A high achiever. Mm-hmm. And then, there needs to be an off switch, and alcohol becomes the off switch.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So sorry, back to your story.
Oh, no problem. So at some point I just knew, and then it was always, at least I didn't drink in the morning, or at least I'm never going to drink and drive. I did when I was younger, I'm not going to lie, but like as a grown 40-year-old that was drinking, or 35-year-old, I was being safe. But I had kids at home, and if daddy was supposed to be home in 30 minutes, I would definitely start drinking. And so in that 30 minutes where I'm thinking we'll be good, something could have happened. So I'm not going to say that I was never a problem, but it just became pretty apparent to me that I was really out of control. Yeah. And it was impacting my parenting, my relationship with my husband. It was impacting my work in the way that I was not giving my best. And that is not who I signed up to be as a nurse practitioner, as a mom, as a wife, right? Yeah. So I tried to quit 1,000,000 times, 1,000,002. And I know we hear this story a lot, but when I really got sick and tired of myself, I knew it was time. And I knew if I didn't, that I was going to slide into that picturesque Hollywood movie scene of the person on the bench with their paper bag and their bottle, no family, no kids. And I was also growing a business at the time. And my goal was to eventually be able to come home and work from home. And that was the other piece of the equation, was that if I wanted to grow my business, I had to do that during my drinking time.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I was trying to play both. As
Yeah.
a health coach, this is really fun. As a health coach, I would time out.
Yeah.
I would time out like when if I was on a phone call with like a 10 or 15-minute client and I was doing a couple of those, I could know if I was doing like, say, 5 of those in the night, after like the third one, I could go ahead and crack something open and start drinking. And by the time we were done, I would be buzzed, but nobody would be able to tell.
Yeah.
It was this ridiculous gymnastics of the mind trying to figure all this out. And a couple of times it didn't work well and I had to cancel calls because I was like, there's no way I'm getting on the phone with somebody slurring or talking too loud or not catching the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And that's the thing. We think we're okay, but are we?
Yeah. Yeah. And then you get into the middle of a conversation and you're like, okay, I am not okay.
Yeah.
And you're like, shoot, I got to end this. We got to find a way to cut it. And then having that knowledge makes it even worse.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's been in that situation where you're trying to not act drunk or buzzed and you are, and you're like, ooh, I think I'm probably making it worse by trying not to look that way.
Yes. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. So I quit in the middle of June 3.5 years ago. And what my message to people, and the reason I became a sober coach, was because the way I quit didn't leave me in a state of deprivation, FOMO, feeling like I was broken, feeling like I'm the only one that can't handle it. I can't have that cheeky glass of wine because, one, to me, I'm really going to do it up, guys. Like, I am going to take it all the way until we are dry or I'm passed out or blacked out somewhere. So it's either the one or it's none. I only get to make that choice with the first one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And so talk us through what that looked like for you when you stopped drinking.
Sure. So I'd had a couple of incidents where I just we all have the regrets, not all of us, but some of us who drink have those regrets the next day. Like, you said something you shouldn't have said, or you hurt somebody's feelings. Maybe you smacked somebody or something. I don't know. As a man, maybe you got in a fist fight. I don't know. But we all had those things we regret. And something like that had happened to me like very recently. And then another one happened right on top of that. And that's when I was like, we're done. But in the meantime, I had known for like 2 years that I was a problem. I knew I was a problem. I was trying to figure it out. I knew I needed to quit, but I wasn't ready. So I started really listening to a lot of anti-alcohol messaging. And one of the big people that used to have a lot on YouTube, and I'm sorry to tell everybody that most of his content is now paid. You have to pay for it. But back in the day, free content from Craig Beck. And he's the stop drinking expert.
Yep.
And he also wrote the book, Alcohol Lied to Me. Are you familiar with it?
No, not that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. He does a lot of other stuff too with manifestation and law of attraction, but he started with the quit drinking expert thing. And his message was that you're not broken. You don't need to give your power away. You actually just need to learn the truth about alcohol. And when you do that, you will naturally start to want to take part in it less and less. So when you can no longer pull the wool over the sheep's eyes. So for somebody who's a problem drinker, we make up all sorts of reasons that we need to drink, have to drink, should drink, all of that. And when we get down to it, why can't you give up your wine? Well, I just like the taste of it.
Yeah.
Or it makes me be able to be social. Without it, I can't go out because people will either ask me why I'm not drinking or I'll be too shy because I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
And he
social
can take
anxiety is big for a lot of people. Use alcohol as that crutch to get over that social anxiety too.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And we can touch on that in just a second. But yeah, so let's do it. Yeah. Social anxiety. What I always tell people with my clients is that before we decided to start using alcohol all the time to kind of grease the way and like really lubricate the social situation, we used to go into social situations completely sober and we figured it out. So even back to when you were 5 and your mom would take you to a birthday party and you didn't know the kids, you would kind of hang on to mom for 5 minutes and then you'd start to venture over, find one person. And an hour later, mom couldn't get you to leave if she wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we learned that when we were 5.
Yeah. And we forget that.
Continued to learn it. Yeah. Every year in grade school, every year in high school, we have learned you walk into a new classroom, you don't know everybody. And so you have to, it's doing it sober. You just didn't know that because back then it wasn't available to you. So you didn't know there was another option. And thank goodness for that, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, really. Hello, I see you there, juggling work, family, life, all while navigating perimenopause and menopause. But guess what? Maybe it's time to break up with the hustle and grind. Going on a retreat is more than just about a vacation. It's an investment in your well-being and a step towards a happier, healthier you. So take a moment, consider the benefits of a retreat and give yourself the gift of rejuvenation and self-care. Self-care is all about giving the best of you, not what's left of you. I want you to save $500 now, jump in for the Reignite You Retreat. We're running in Bali in April 2024 and October 2024. And yes, we sure do have payment plans available. See you there.
Yeah. So the point of Craig Beck is that his philosophy is that if we can break down all those lies, then you won't be so blinded by it. I had wine up on a pedestal. Many women, we've got this mommy wine culture. We've got it's 5:00. It's time for that wine. But he just kind of breaks everything down and shows you why it's all a lie.
Yep.
So for instance, like I like the taste of alcohol. If you think back, yes, alcohol can taste good if we do a whole lot of doctoring to it.
Yeah.
You take vodka, I don't think vodka would ever taste good to me. The first time I ever tasted liquor, what did you do? You did a shiver, a shake, and you might have even dry heaved and had a struggle to keep it down. That's not something that tastes good.
Yeah.
Wine is an acquired taste because it tastes terrible. And the first time you have red wine, it about knocks you out.
Yes. It's not nice.
It's not. But we've decided that we will condition ourselves to tolerate the taste so that we can get the benefit that we think we're getting from it, which is the buzz. But the truth is it doesn't taste very good. Once you get used to it, sure, you can drink it, but it's not like, think of something that's really yummy, like pineapple juice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or anything else in the world, but that's not what you're getting when you have that like deep red glass of wine, right?
Yeah.
But we've been taught to put it on this pedestal. Oh, it's amazing. And we spend all this money and time trying to be wine connoisseurs. And, oh, I know so much about wine and it's got woody notes and fruity notes. And no, it doesn't. Stop it.
The second glass, it really doesn't.
It doesn't at all.
After the second mouthful, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. So after the first mouthful, it gets better. But even if you're an occasional drinker, probably every time you have a glass of wine, you're like, whoa. And then you just get used to it after a couple minutes. Yeah. But even being away from it for about 2 weeks, you would have that initial shock again.
Yes.
So it's just kind of deprogramming yourself, I would say, because I had made it my whole personality. It was my entire, I was in love with her. Okay. She was my bestie.
Oh,
and Yeah. So, but once I could see that my bestie was actually kind of backstabbing me the entire time, I just didn't know. It was easier to walk away from it. And then you end up in a situation where you're not sad. I can go to bars. I can pour you a glass of wine. Yeah. I don't care if you have 3 glasses while we hang out together. Yeah. If you start to get really intoxicated, the only problem is that it kind of just brings down the vibe and it brings down the level of intelligence in the room.
I was going to say the quality of conversation. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So then I might be like ready to get my keys and go, but also because I'm a non-drinker, I'm going to want to go to bed at a normal time. Because I'm not staying up to continue this pattern of just more. Yeah. So people who don't abuse drugs every night, go to bed. They don't stay up till 2-3 in the morning at the age of 40, right?
Yeah, exactly. And how good do you feel the next day?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Crazy amazing. Actually, one of my clients just texted me a picture. He had to host an event. He's brand new to sobriety too, guys. Yeah. He texted me a picture of the bill. He hosted a happy hour for employees and some like guests that they had to wine and dine. Yeah. And it was $10,000. The tip was like $2,300 if I'm doing my math right.
Yeah. Wow. And just on booze.
Well, and a little food. And a little food. Yeah.
Token food.
Right. Just to show we've got something in our tummy, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and so he texted me this morning to first tell me he was proud of himself for not drinking and he did a great job, even being around everybody just getting sloshed.
Yeah.
And he also got to go to work today and some of them called out probably, and some of them came to work dragging, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Think of how miserable I remember being that miserable, but
Yeah.
showing up because I had to. I
Yeah.
needed to go to work, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think going back to what you just said earlier, I think that's a really important point is so the actual addiction to alcohol is as a drug is one thing, but if you've decided that you want to change your relationship with alcohol, I agree that willpower is, oh, I'm not going to drink today. And I'm strong, I can do this, oh look, there's bottle shop. I'm just going to pick up a bottle of wine on the way home. So relying on willpower, and I think willpower is not your friend. So it's willpower's up there with alcohol as you think it's your bestie, but it's really not. So
Right.
it's tapping into how you feel. Do I want to hurt the people around me? Do I want to wake up with feeling terrible? Do I want to make an idiot of myself again? Do I want to? And it's then going, okay, well, alcohol makes me do that, and I don't want that anymore. So and I think it's probably against the traditional ways we've sort of looked at breaking addictions and alcohol is because we've sort of gone, oh, you must be really bad if you need to break up with it, and therefore you have a problem. You're right. Whereas if you sort of look at and go, I'm not the problem, alcohol is the problem, and I need to break up with that problem, not me. So
Right.
I think it's just flipping that narrative about it.
Mm-hmm. And not really wanting it because you don't see any benefit anymore.
No, that's right. It becomes a friend who, isn't really a friend. And like you said,
kind of let them go.
Yeah.
See you later.
It doesn't serve me anymore, so off you go. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you hit a very good point because there's the physical addiction and then there's the mental addiction or that aspect that you need to deal with. So I'm not saying that quitting alcohol was like, oh, easy peasy lemon squeezy because I believe there was no benefit. It was still hard.
Yeah.
The first couple days were not fun.
No, because there's a physical addiction, like there's a physical component. So your body hates you in those first few days because you're not giving it what it's used to. And our brain likes to keep us safe. So our brain likes to keep us in that pattern that we're used to. So if your pattern is to drink to unwind every night, and then all of a sudden you're not doing that, your brain kind of goes, oh, hang on a second.
Right.
Yeah. And then
uncomfortable.
Yeah. So it's I think, working through that. So someone in that sort of situation where they kind of go, there's little bells going off going, what? I just want to change my relationship with alcohol. Where would you recommend people start?
It really depends on the person. So the most common thing is always going to be AA. It's 100 years old. It's all you think about when you think about, oh, I need to change my relationship with alcohol, which is really scary for people, by the way, because there's a certain population that doesn't believe in God. And this is a highly Bible, God. AA is very religious in its foundation, but also it can be scary because for me, I didn't want to go the AA route only because as a nurse practitioner in a small town, if I showed up there, I would be sitting with some of my patients. And I felt that would, number one, it's not anonymous, but number two, it also to me felt like it would impact my credibility with my patients in my other setting. And so I didn't really think it was an option for me. And a lot of people who are in that situation are not going to want to do that. And maybe the one and there's ways around it, of course, but A is a great place.
Yeah. But I think
it does resonate. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because for a lot of people who recognize the fact that they've got problematic drinking may not identify as an alcoholic. Where that sort of mindset to get yourself to a point where you need to go to AA, like that, like even my brain went immediately, full-blown alcoholic. So I've got a problem and I want to change my relationship with alcohol versus full-blown. So
I gotcha. Yeah.
There's that. Yeah. Oh, I'm not that bad. So alcohol anonymous isn't for me.
Oh, that's interesting. There's two ways to look at that too, which is, and it happens in real life. So one is I'm not an alcoholic, so I'm not going there. Or I don't want to be labeled as an alcoholic, so I'm not going to go there. Or you don't know where else to go. You show up there and you leave feeling like you don't have a problem, because honestly, a lot of the people in AA were doing a lot more than what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so, and I've heard this from every client that's gone, that they felt like a lot of them got value too. So let's say that, but they would say that when they left, they felt like, gosh, maybe I'm just making this up. Maybe I can just continue on with my drinking patterns because I'm not
that bad.
Comparison.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have drugs that they're doing at the same time. So they're in AA and they're also talking about the other stuff they're doing. And so as that wine mom, right? Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, oh gosh, I'd never touch heroin or cocaine or meth. And these people are crazy. And so I don't resonate with them. And now I feel like I don't belong too.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to be able to even stand up because they're all going to be like, oh, go sit down somewhere. You've got no problems.
Yeah. Go back to the playground. Yeah.
So AA is great for a subset of people though. But if it doesn't resonate with you, like it didn't with me, I didn't know about sober coaching. I'm sure it was available, but I didn't know about it. TikTok wasn't around. And so I did it on my own with the knowledge that I had just 2 years of pounding this information into my brain. Just every time I felt like really guilty about a night of drinking or something, I would just turn on Craig Beck on YouTube and just listen to the messages and listen to him talk about his life. And I could really relate to all of it because we all do the same stuff. Yeah. And so that's what we bring to sober coaching. Yes. So as a sober coach, that's what I bring to the table. I talk to people like this on a Zoom back and forth. Yep. And it's a special relationship because we can be really honest. I understand you. Yes. And even if we weren't doing exactly the same thing, we were doing the same thing. Yeah. And if I'm going to do a fit for you as a coach, right?
Yeah. And you can call the behavior for what it is. Yes. I think it's human nature to justify what we do. Whereas, you can see it because you've been there and you can call it for what it is. So, yeah.
Yes. And I can spot when they're still lying to themselves, and I can spot when they still have a misconception about alcohol or feeling like a little bit of FOMO, like, oh, woe is me. And I can spot that and we can start to work on that and all of the root causes. And that's a lot of what you talk with your listeners about, is getting to the root of it, not wanting it anymore, and then building a life back. So sober coaching is a really great option for someone who does not feel like they need to go sit on a metal fold-out chair and have their cup of coffee in their styrofoam cup. Or if you would just like to be anonymous. A lot of my clients don't want to don't want to have this title follow them around. And it just made me think of something with titles, because you had said earlier something about kind of levels and how we blame the person with the alcohol problem. Whereas what I said in my example of poor Lauren with the heroin, let's get her some help. We're going to rally around her, but it's poor Lauren instead of Lauren is weak. It's so interesting that once you go through this whole process, we start to get to all these different levels of like all of these emotional things and kind of where you've been, where we're going. And we're just like building this entire thing around, I don't know, I just completely lost my space. One thing about Lauren is I have ADHD. I absolutely have ADHD. Maybe you can just burn that one part of the tape.
A bit what though? I
was going somewhere.
Oh yeah, now we're going off on a totally different tangent.
Sorry.
I went to an adult ADHD seminar last year because I haven't been diagnosed, but highly suspect I have ADHD.
Okay.
And I ticked a lot of boxes when I was sitting at that seminar. But one of the things was with that executive functioning part of the brain is because ADHD in women shows up very differently. So, we be the good girl, we go to work, we go to school, we go to college, we do what we need to do, we conform all day. And that executive functioning part of our brain struggles so hard to hold it together. So then when we go home, we need a release. And for a lot of women, and I would put perimenopause in this as well, because there's a lot of hormonal changes as well going on at that same time, is we need that release. So it can show up as we drink alcohol to numb things down. We do online shopping just to get that little dopamine hit when we hit buy. It can show up as promiscuity. It can show up as gambling. It can show up as it can show up in so many different ways. And for some women, it's not alcohol, but it's sugar. So we switch in something somewhere, which is so interesting. Yeah. So sorry,
The
totally.
ADHD thing. Oh, no, don't worry about it. ADHD, this is actually part of my story. I didn't know it was. And you just reminded me, because I didn't know that I had ADHD until after I quit drinking, because my symptoms were so masked with alcohol that I was just kind of like on this flat all the time, because alcohol is a depressant. You're just kind of like down here. I got diagnosed after the fact. And there's actually a huge link between ADHD and alcohol.
Massive.
Misuse.
Yeah, no, huge. And it was just sort of like a big revelation for me when I was sitting in this seminar. I was like, okay, because I could see it in my clients. I could probably see it in me. I could see it in my friends. I could see it. I was like, there's links there, 100%.
And being dopamine deficient and then bringing in alcohol, which gives you a huge synthetic, like, bam, all this dopamine at once. And it's very unnaturally high amount of dopamine. And so you can see that would be a great way to medicate ADHD. But what's interesting is that a year after I quit drinking, maybe a year and a half, I did start ADHD medication. Whenever it was. I'm a poor historian, but I started the ADHD medication, and it did the exact same thing that alcohol did. And I thought, whoa. Holy cow. Because it just quieted everything down. But without making me drunk, without making me not be able to get out of bed in the morning, without making me completely dehydrated. All of those things. So it was a pretty cool thing, just as an aside, since we got kind of off on the ADHD thing, because I was on a monologue and completely lost my place, and that is not the first time that's happened. It happens at least once a week.
But we will put that also down to perimenopause, because regular listeners of the podcast know that I lose my words on a regular basis. They will just go from my head.
Well, maybe that's part of mine too, because this is relatively new, and I just started having hot flashes. So this may be going with it, and it may be exacerbating my ADHD as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we're totally off track here now, but the time, like puberty and teenage years, pregnancy, postpartum, and perimenopause, menopause are the big times where symptoms for ADHD, symptoms like hormonal symptoms, and there's so much crossover as well, impact us as women. And we tend to just mask it and keep going. We soldier on, we push through, we do what we need to do. We just hold it together. But sometimes we definitely go down that path of self-medicating. Right. Hey, so Lauren, this has been such a great conversation. I love these chats where it's real. We're talking about real women, and I think that's where our audience can identify really well. And hopefully, people listening are just going, "Oh, yep, that's me." And certainly, you're welcome to reach out. So, Lauren, where can people find you?
My last name is Howman, Howman. And my website is www.howmanhealth.com. I'm on Facebook as Lauren Howman. I'm on TikTok as Lauren Howman. And Instagram. Oh gosh, don't reach out to me on Instagram. You'll get me, but it'll be 3 weeks because I'm terrible on chatting. I'm in the age group where Instagram it never clicked for me, and I don't really get it. I don't like the format. I want my Facebook, right?
You're on TikTok, so go you.
I'm on TikTok. But I think because Facebook and Instagram were running parallel for so long that I was like, well, I don't need both, and I just can't get into it. And
totally.
Honestly, I'm perimenopausal, so I belong in the Facebook group, right?
And which is why our community has grown to over 10,000 women on Facebook. There's a few that dabble in Instagram, but most of us are on Facebook too.
So you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok is the place if you want to hear some sober content. Reach out to me on my website. There's plenty of ways to find me through DM or through contact me, all of that good stuff. But I do free consults because, hey, I may be a good fit, I may not. Something else might work better, but there's no risk in reaching out. So
absolutely.
I really appreciate you. I feel like we need to have so many more conversations.
Yeah, we do indeed. So, Lauren, I will put your contact details in the show notes. So if you would like to reach out to Lauren, you can find her on the website in the show notes. All right, Lauren, well, thank you so much for being such a fabulous guest. And
Thank you so much.
yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation, and yeah, looking forward to, I'm sure there will be more.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Bye, everyone, and thanks for listening. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. You can head on over to the show notes at kyliepinwill.com/podcast, where you'll find all the links. Now, before we go, it would mean the world to me if you'd head on over to your favourite podcast channel, subscribe and leave a review. Don't forget to share it with your friends. Then stay tuned for next week's episode, and can't wait to see you then.